The mechanical rhythm of folding paper bags and organizing groceries had replaced the electric tension of high stakes poker tables 30 years ago, but Eddie the Eagle Kowalski still read every customer's facial expressions and body language with the razor sharp intuition that had once made him one of the most feared professional poker players in the world. Eddie, 72, sat in the first row of the Tonight Show studio, his gambler's eyes automatically calculating odds and analyzing tells in everyone around him, while his steady hands moved in unconscious card shuffling motions on his lap. The small FreshMart grocery 30 years dedicated service name tag on his store vest caught the studio lights as he adjusted his position with the careful control of someone who had spent decades hiding his emotions behind an unreadable poker face. To the thousands of customers whose groceries Eddie had bagged over 3 decades, he was just another reliable store employee who somehow always knew the perfect way to pack their items and had an unusual ability to stay calm during any rush or crisis. What they didn't know was that their groceries were being organized by a man who had won the World Series of Poker main event and earned over $15 million 0 cents during his professional gambling career. What Eddie didn't know was that his story had been quietly circulating among poker historians after someone had discovered that Eddie the Eagle Kowalski, who dominated high-stakes games in the 1980s and early 1990s, before mysteriously disappearing from professional poker, was the same person now working at FreshMart in Newark. The revelation had gone viral among gambling enthusiasts who remembered the legendary player whose mathematical genius and psychological insight had redefined tournament poker strategy. Eddie's story had begun with a natural talent for mathematics and human psychology that had driven him from small stakes neighborhood games to the highest levels of professional gambling. Born in Chicago to Polish immigrant parents who ran a small corner tavern, Eddie had shown exceptional ability to calculate odds and read people from childhood, winning his first serious poker game at age 16 with money meant for his high school graduation suit. Instead of college, Eddie had chosen the underground poker circuit of the 1970s, traveling from game to game and learning from legendary players who taught him that poker wasn't just about cards. It was about understanding human nature, managing risk, and maintaining psychological control under enormous pressure. His nickname, the Eagle, came from his ability to spot weakness in opponents' betting patterns and swoop in for decisive kills when the moment was right. Over 15 years, Eddie Kowalski had become one of the most successful professional poker players of his generation. He'd won the World Series of Poker main event in 1987, captured numerous tournament championships, and dominated cash games where single pots could exceed $100,000 0 cents. His playing style combined mathematical precision with psychological warfare, and his ability to maintain emotional control during crucial moments had earned him respect from the world's best players. But professional gambling had demanded a lifestyle that proved unsustainable over time. The constant travel, the isolation from normal relationships, and the psychological stress of risking enormous sums of money had gradually taken their toll. The final blow had come in 1994, when a series of devastating losses during a particularly bad run had wiped out most of his bankroll, forcing him to confront the reality that even the best poker players could experience variance that destroyed careers. The grocery store job had been taken in 1994 as temporary work while Eddie rebuilt his poker bankroll, but 30 years later, he'd discovered unexpected peace in the honest labor and regular schedule that came with serving customers who appreciated reliable, friendly service. He'd found that the people reading skills that made him a great poker player also made him excellent at customer service, understanding what people needed before they asked for it. The Tonight Show tickets had been a surprise retirement gift from FreshMart management and loyal customers who had pooled their resources to honor the bagger who had somehow made their shopping experience more pleasant for 30 years through his obvious attention to detail and uncanny ability to remember everyone's preferences. It was a Friday night taping in February, and Jimmy was in good spirits after interviewing a comedian about his new Netflix special. During his commercial break interaction with the audience, his attention was drawn to Eddie by his alert, analytical way of observing everything around him and the controlled precision with which he moved. "Sir, you have incredibly sharp eyes and seem to notice everything. Are you in security or investigation work? Eddie straightened with the automatic poker face of someone who had spent decades concealing his thoughts and emotions. Grocery bagger, sir. FreshMart in Newark. Been helping customers with their shopping for 30 years, retiring next week. A warm murmur went through the nearby audience members. Grocery store workers were essential service providers who helped families get what they needed, and 30 years of dedicated work deserved recognition. 30 years bagging groceries? You must have incredibly steady hands and attention to detail. Eddie's face showed just a hint of the sharp intelligence that had once made him famous in poker circles. You learn to read what people need, organize things efficiently, pay attention to details that might seem small but matter to customers. It's about understanding human behavior and delivering reliable service. You talk about reading people and human behavior like psychology or strategic analysis, very sophisticated understanding. Well, good customer service requires understanding what people really want, even when they don't say it directly. You observe patterns, notice signs that indicate what someone needs. Jimmy's attention sharpened at Eddie's slip of poker terminology. Did you say tails? That's a poker term. He paused, realizing he'd revealed more than intended. I used to play cards recreationally before I started working at the grocery store. Nothing serious, just neighborhood games, casual poker with friends. The mention of poker, combined with Eddie's obvious analytical sophistication, caught Jimmy's attention immediately. There was something about Eddie's careful phrasing that suggested more than casual card playing. Eddie, you seem to really understand poker strategy and human psychology. Have you always worked in grocery stores? Eddie looked uncertain, as if deciding how much of his past to reveal. Actually, I used to play poker more seriously before I started FreshMart. Professional poker, tournament play, that type of thing, but that was a long time ago. The casual mention of professional poker caused a ripple through the audience. Professional poker players were legendary figures who had mastered one of the world's most challenging games of skill and psychology. Jimmy made a decision that would change everything. Eddie, professional poker is serious gambling. Would you mind coming down here and telling us about your poker career? Eddie looked genuinely nervous. Oh, I don't think people want to hear about old gambling stories. That world is very different from family entertainment. Trust me, people definitely want to hear about professional poker from someone who lived it. Come on down. As Eddie made his way to the stage with the controlled movement of someone who had once walked into high-stakes games where millions of dollars were at risk, his bearing transformed completely. The quiet confidence of someone who had once been feared at poker tables around the world. When he reached the stage, Jimmy guided him to a comfortable chair. Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy announced, this is Eddie Kowalski. For 30 years, he's been bagging groceries at FreshMart, but before that, he was a professional poker player. Eddie, tell us about your gambling career. Eddie settled into the chair, and when he spoke about poker, his voice took on the measured precision of someone who had mastered one of the world's most demanding mental competition. Professional poker in the 80s and 90s was very different from today's game. Fewer tournaments, smaller fields, but the skill level was incredibly high. Every player at the top level had spent years learning to control emotions, calculate odds, and read human psychology under extreme pressure. The audience was completely quiet, understanding they were hearing about a world most people only saw in movies. What was your specialty in poker? Eddie's eyes showed the sharp intelligence that had once made him legendary. Tournament play primarily, though I played high-stakes cash games too. My strength was psychological analysis, reading opponents' betting patterns, spotting tells that revealed the strength of their hands, understanding when someone was bluffing versus when they had genuine strength. Did you win any major tournaments? World Series of Poker main event in 1987, several other tournament championships. At my peak, I was ranked among the top 10 tournament players in the world. Jimmy reached behind his chair and pulled out a tablet loaded with poker history databases and gambling records. Eddie, we did some research before tonight's show. He showed Eddie archived tournament results and poker publications. According to poker records, Eddie, the Eagle Kowalski, won the 1987 World Series of Poker main event and earned over $15 million, 0 cents in tournament and cash game winnings. Eddie looked stunned. You found my old poker records? We did. Listen to this from a 1988 Poker Player magazine article. The Eagles' combination of mathematical precision and psychological insight represents the evolution of tournament poker. His ability to read opponents and control pot odds has redefined strategic play at the highest levels. The studio fell completely silent. The audience was processing that they were meeting someone who had been world champion of one of the most challenging games ever created. Eddie, you were clearly one of the best poker players in the world. What happened? Why did you leave professional poker? Eddie's expression grew more reflective, touching on the harsh realities of professional gambling that most people never understood. Poker is a game of skill, but there's always an element of luck and variance. Even the best players can experience losing streaks that destroy bankrolls. In 1994, I hit a run of bad variance that wiped out most of my winnings. Combined with the lifestyle stress and isolation, I decided it was time to find more stable work. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was like losing my identity. I'd defined myself as a poker player for 15 years, and suddenly I couldn't afford to play at the levels where I'd been successful. But I learned something important. The skills that made me good at poker also made me good at other things. Jimmy leaned forward. How do poker skills translate to bagging groceries? Eddie smiled for the first time since taking the stage, reading people, understanding what they need, staying calm under pressure, paying attention to details, managing resources efficiently. Whether you're playing poker or helping customers, success comes from understanding human nature and delivering consistent performance. Jimmy continued reading from the tablet. Eddie, we found something else. Several professional poker players and gambling historians have been trying to locate you to interview you about tournament strategy from the classic era. People want to interview me about poker? Listen to this from Daniel Negreanu, current poker champion. Eddie the Eagle was ahead of his time in understanding tournament psychology and mathematical optimization. His strategies are still studied by serious players. Finding him would be like discovering a lost master of the game. Jimmy stood and addressed the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, this man was world champion of poker, one of the most challenging mental competitions ever created, then spent 30 years applying those same analytical and people skills to serving grocery customers. He turned back to Eddie. The poker community wants to honor you. The World Series of Poker wants to induct you into their Hall of Fame, and several poker shows want to feature your story and strategies. Eddie's eyes filled with tears. They want to honor my poker career? They do. And Eddie, there's something else. Your mathematical and psychological approaches to tournament play influenced an entire generation of professional players. Jimmy had one more surprise. We have someone here who wanted to meet you. From backstage, Phil Hellmuth, one of poker's most successful tournament players, appeared carrying a deck of cards and a WSOP bracelet. Eddie, Hellmuth said, approaching with obvious respect, I've been studying your tournament strategies since I started playing professionally. Your psychological approach and mathematical precision set standards that we still try to achieve. You're one of the legends who built modern tournament poker. Eddie was openly crying now, overwhelmed by recognition from poker's current generation. You know my playing style. Every serious tournament player knows the Eagle. Your 1987 main event final table performance is still studied as a master class in tournament psychology and strategic play. You showed that poker wasn't just gambling, it was a skill game requiring intelligence, discipline, and emotional control. Billy sat back down beside Eddie. Eddie, you've spent 30 years thinking your poker career was history, but what you really did was continue using those same skills to read people and serve your community while your strategic innovations continued influencing how the game is played. As they helped Eddie back to his seat, he stopped and looked out at the audience one more time. Thank you for honoring my poker career, but I want people to know gambling can be dangerous, and I was fortunate to walk away when I did. The skills I learned, analytical thinking, emotional control, understanding people, those serve me well in honest work. Sometimes the biggest win is knowing when to quit while you still have your dignity. The episode that aired became one of the most fascinating Tonight Show segments ever, sparking conversations about professional gambling, risk management, and the transferable skills that make people successful in multiple fields. Eddie's story inspired discussions about gambling addiction awareness, while also highlighting how analytical and psychological skills could be applied constructively in any profession. His grocery store became an informal gathering place where he occasionally taught customers about probability, risk assessment, and reading people skills from poker applied to everyday life decisions. Eddie spent his retirement occasionally consulting for responsible gambling programs and teaching decision making workshops while helping at the grocery store during busy periods, discovering that leaving professional poker hadn't ended his use of strategic thinking. It had redirected it toward helping people make better choices in all aspects of life. At 74, Eddie still reads people with a poker player's trained eye, still believes that understanding human nature is the key to success in any field, and still carries his WSOP bracelet alongside his grocery store name tag, a reminder that true professionals can apply their skills to serve others, whether at a poker table or in everyday interactions that make life a little better for everyone involved. Because sometimes the most important games aren't the ones with the highest stakes, but the ones where former champions use their hard won wisdom to help ordinary people navigate the odds and make smart decisions, one carefully considered choice at a time.